let's look at what makes a brand a great brand. Why are we building brands? We're building brands because you want to tell your story to the world. And the emphasis is really here, your story. People are going to talk about your brand. If you don't define that story, people will define that story for you. So it's very, very important to get in front and tell that story. The other really important element is you need consumers and employees to connect with that story that you defined. And not just connect, but connect emotionally. They need to feel it, they need to be passionate about it. I think the images that you see worldwide, where people are in line for hours, freezing cold, right, or the tropical heat that you see now with Star Wars, people buying their tickets online and camping. I'm not sure whether, probably people are already camping for the tickets. That means there's an emotional connection to in this case, to Star Wars. So you need to build that emotional connection. So to tell your story and to the world, you need to answer 3 questions. Who are you? Why are you here? And what are you doing? So I'm going to do that for the Cake brand now. So who are we? Cake as a company, the Cake Corporation, is owned by Cisco. And Cisco is the largest food distributor in the United States. We are fully owned. I'm very proud of that. We have offices in in the United States, in Sri Lanka, in Texas, Silicon Valley, and here in Sri Lanka. And I have it here on the slide because it's important to emphasize Cake Labs is the engineering engine behind Cake. So when I talk about Cake, the product, and Cake, the company, the difference between Cake product and Cake company is that Cake Labs runs Cake. But what all the 300 employees that we have worldwide have in common is we love restaurants, we love food, and we love technology. So this is who we are, but why are we here? What are we doing? Well, we love food, but we realize running a restaurant is hard. And I had the fortune to speak a little bit earlier to a restaurant owner, or a couple of restaurant owners, and whenever I do that, people nod their head. Yeah, running a restaurant is freaking hard. The second element is a lot can go into the way of running a restaurant, of like enjoying a restaurant. So as a consumer, for me to find something, for me to book that, for me to order it, and seating, a lot of stuff really can take away from the enjoyment of the restaurant. We are here because we want to change that. We want to make it easier, both for the restaurant owner and for the consumer. But how do we do that? The best way to describe it, and Mani's actually going to talk a little bit more about this later, so I'm only going to briefly touch on this, is to be part of the entire restaurant cycle. When you go to a restaurant, you look at booking, you look at where do I need to go, where do I want to eat, you arrive, you order, and then you go about your story. How do you do that, right? We have built a seamless connection to be a part of the entire restaurant cycle. And the best example that I saw, or a good example for making it easier and connecting people to that is, I saw the product here, I used it yesterday, the Pick Me, which is where you take your cab and you use the app to do that. If you think about it, it's another product where from start to finish, it touches looking at it for a cab, seeing when it arrives, and then I think down the line they're going to do payment. This whole process is becoming easier. It's becoming easier for folks. We are doing the same thing here in the restaurant business, from ordering from searching to ordering to payment. Make that part of one platform. So people have asked me, or asked us, why Cake? Why the name Cake? And we spent quite a bit of time thinking about the name, and I wanted to share some of the thoughts and rationale with you here. Here's some of the criteria that you need to think about, or that we went through and said, we really want this to, whatever name we're going to come up with, we want this to be part of it. The first of all is short and simple. Apple, right? Short and simple, you're going to remember it, you hear it once, 5, 6, 7 days later, you're going to remember it. So it's short and simple. suggestive and expansible. What I mean by that, best example, I have the Amazon here. Amazon.com, when they originally launched, they were thinking, actually, this is a true story, they were thinking for a while to name themselves bookseller.com. Now imagine they would have named themselves bookseller.com, really hard to sell toothbrushes or other elements on that. So you need a name that can basically be part of your entire expanding portfolio. Amazon.com is a great example of that. Timberland, you may not be familiar here, but let me describe it. It's a clothing company, outdoor clothing company. If I mention to you Timberland, you close your eyes, Timberland, you're probably thinking about hiking somewhere. And finally, I know everyone's familiar with that brand, is a Red Bull. When I see Red Bull, I'm thinking about emotion, I'm getting charged, I go like, this is great. This is probably one of the most important elements of the ones that I mentioned. Now, how does cake rank against those? First, when I talked about short and simple, cake is short and simple, right? Second element, it's imagery. When I close my eyes and I tell you cake, well, you're going to imagine something. It's expansive. Cake can be a lot of things, so it's very easy to expand the portfolio. And last but not least, emotional, right? So cake, elicits some emotion internally. There's some emotional connection, and I touched on the importance of emotion earlier. This is a nice transition. I went from Red Bull to purple cow, sorry. What I mean by that is you can't be tame. Chanel's going to talk a little bit later about the importance of connecting to Silicon Valley DNA, and what we want to do is we want to stand out. We want to be the purple cow. We want to, when you go down the street, that you realize that you can see us and you connect to us. So we don't want to be tame. And cake, I think again, the name does that, particularly when you associate it with a technology company. Cake also, is another benefit, really stands for our story that I touched on a bit earlier. We want to make it easy. Cake is easy as cake. And if you want to grab me later, I have some cake jokes, so more than happy to tell you those. But yes, cake makes it easy. Cake is also part of a platform. If you think layers of cake or pieces of cake, variety of cake, it's part of the platform. So this is our story, this is our brand, Cake the name, and our motto and things that we're using over and over again internally is we want to make it easier. Last but not least, again I would like to emphasize because really look at the difference between Cake and Cake Labs. Cake Labs, the best way to explain it, Cake Labs runs Cake. Cake Labs is the engineering arm, and it runs our product, Cake.